those drinks. It's time for Sports Around the Bar. Hey guys, welcome into Sports Around the Bar, your weekly sports talk show. As always, I am Jake, your bartender, and I'm joined on center stool by Drew. And Drew, we're going to be all over the board today, man. NHL, NBA, we got some football, we got some baseball to talk about. We're getting everything under the sun. Sorry to every women's college lacrosse fan out there. I don't know if we're going to get around to that, but everything else we're pretty much talking about today.
I watched it.
Women's lacrosse?
Oh, yeah.
Well, you played it, so, I mean...
Well, you know. I got to play something.
Anyways, guys, we're going to start in the NFL by talking about Zach Brown, and then we're going to move on to the NBA and talk about some of these new coaching hires. We're also going to get around to the playoffs there in that league. We're going to talk Kyle Hendricks in baseball and his day, because he made, I wouldn't call it history, Drew, but it's pretty impressive. And then we're going to round it out with some NHL talk as well. Why don't we start, though, by talking football, just like we usually do. Zach Brown, if you haven't heard, signs a one-year, $3 million contract with the Philadelphia Eagles to play middle linebacker for them, or some form of middle linebacker. How do you feel about this signing, man? Because when I saw it, I was like, Philadelphia, I keep thinking that window's closing, and they keep making moves like this. I'm like, they're hanging in there, man.
I think it's a great signing. To be honest with you, as a Chiefs fan, I wish they would have went out and signed him. But I think it's a great move. I think he can still play perfectly fine. A one-year prove-it deal is perfectly fine for him. I think he can go out there and prove exactly what he's been doing for pretty much his whole career, maybe minus his time in Tennessee.
Yeah, well, no, he was good in Tennessee, and then we just let him walk. But I think this kind of signing is totally indicative of exactly what these teams do. You know, he just got off a big contract with Washington where they gave him 3 years. I think it was like $24 million contract. And then Philly's picking him up on the cheap. So it's exactly what both these teams do. Washington overpays, Philly underpays, and goes for the value on the back end. Last year, though, he was still pretty effective. I'm kind of surprised to see him not return to the Washington Redskins. He had 96 tackles, 69 of them by himself. Nice, I know, pretty impressive. And he also was the third best graded off-the-ball linebacker. If you listen to Pro Football Focus, had 10 tackles for loss. Drew, this guy's a tackling machine. He's incredibly impactful in the running game. I think him going into Philadelphia, playing behind that great defensive line they've got, man, they needed linebackers, especially with Jordan Hicks leaving. This was the perfect signing because they didn't have to reach in the second round to go grab one of these guys that did not live up to a second-round grade. Instead, they just signed a really cheap veteran who they know is going to get the job done.
Oh, there's a lot of love from Brian. We know that, of course. He says, good move for the Shitbirds. I think he will do good. And if not, then no big deal. Got him for the cheap and for only 1 year only. And to be honest with you, I think the only thing that's really having him an issue finding any kind of home is the fact his cover skills is just not where the NFL is moving. You know, they really want these middle linebackers and any position in linebacking can cover. And something that Brown struggles at for sure is coverage when it comes to passing downs.
I totally agree with you. Brian says he's all for 69 tackles as well. He loves that stat. We do too. When you're talking about Zach Brown, though, like I said, I was kind of shocked to see him fall this far after free agency and after the draft and everything. I think everybody wanted to go see if they can go get one of those big middle linebackers, either one of the Devons out of there. But beyond that, again, I'm kind of surprised. I would have hedged my bets if I was towards the back end of the first round and just said, there's a good chance those guys are not going to fall to me. Especially Philadelphia picking in the 20s. I would have picked them up beforehand. I can't argue they got a good deal here, though. They got better as a defense by bringing them in because our entire criticism of them last year was like they've got a loaded defensive line, but everything else behind it, not that spectacular. So right. They might have brought in the best linebacker on the team out of free agency with this move.
For sure the best run stopper. And sitting behind Fletcher Cox, there's not going to be a lot of room up in the middle.
Exactly. I totally agree with you. He's going to be that great guy that if everybody gets blocked up front and somehow you manage to hold those guys off, he's going to get that free release moving in there with the running back, meeting him in the hole. This is an amazing signing for Philadelphia, and I'm not going to say Super Bowl, obviously, when you're bringing on a veteran like this, but it takes you a step closer. I really do believe that. I think if they can get one or two more guys to step up and make an impact in that linebacking core, the secondary plays a little bit better, we're going to be talking about them having a defensive resurgence. And if their offense is anything like it's been, man, this could be a Super Bowl contending team.
Well, it's only 2 years removed from their Super Bowl. I mean, can you really sit there and say they took a dramatic drop-off?
Some teams do. Look at Atlanta. Is Atlanta the same team that went to the Super Bowl?
I'm not asking about Atlanta. I said, are
exactly.
But minus Nick Foles, I mean, realistically, who'd they lose?
Exactly. I mean, they did a pretty good job of bringing guys like Darby back as well. I mean, they had an opportunity to. They lost Jordan Hicks. They lost Lance Hendricks, so those are a couple linebackers. But when you're replacing with a guy like Zach Brown, it's not that big of a drop-off. I'm right there with you. Let's talk basketball, though. Why don't we move on to talk about some of these coaches first before we talk about anything else? Ty Lue, he's back. Drew, And it looks like it's going to be with LeBron out there in LA. Now, the deal is not final by any means, but all the rumors are they plan to make him an offer in the next couple days. You already know my thoughts. I'm going to let you go first, man. Is this the right move for LA?
No. It's not even close. It's LeBron calling all the shots. It's literally him calling every shot the front office is making. As much as you want to speculate about why Magic Johnson is gone, I think it's all the fact that he wasn't seeing eye to eye with LeBron. And I think ownership's like, we listen to LeBron, and what LeBron wants is it. They won a championship, and they think their best option right now is listening to LeBron James and what he wants and get the team and coach around him to win them another championship.
No, I agree. And if you're some of these other players on that team, does that mean, hey, I'm not going to be around too much longer if they're just totally giving in to LeBron? Because I think Magic Johnson probably held out a little bit last year when LeBron wanted to trade all the young players away, no matter what the cost, just bring Anthony Davis into LA. And he kind of pushed back against that a little bit. They got to a point where they're like, look, we're giving them everything under the sun, and they're still sitting there saying we're not interested in LeBron. Or we're not interested in trading Anthony Davis. I absolutely believe he had a little bit of pushback, and that's why he doesn't have this job anymore. The problem is the Lakers ownership just showed how weak they are, actually. I know that everyone's talking like Jeannie Buss is one of the best owners in the NBA and everything. I don't think that's true anymore. Not when you cave to a player like LeBron here. Maybe they're trying to read the room and say that's the way the NBA is going, and the players have more power now. We need to listen to them. But that's the wrong move. You don't sit there and let a player run the team because it's going to sit there and divide everybody else. It's going to divide your locker room. And I think the Lakers, having a 35-year-old LeBron James, is not going to have the same success as the Cleveland Cavaliers. That 1 year, they came back 3-1 on Golden State to win a championship. I just don't see it happening, man. I think this might be another 2 or 3 bad years, and then they have to go start the rebuild again.
Before I get back in your comment about players controlling what the front office does, I do want to get to Brian's comment. He goes, LeBron gets to make all the calls for that team. This is not a good move. He said that locker room has to be a mess, man. I completely agree with you. Will, what's going on, man? Glad you could join us. But Brian's right. I mean, you just nailed on the dot. You said all the players looking around go, are you next? Am I next? How do they know how do they know what's going on?
You can't build chemistry like that.
What if you bump in LeBron during practice and the next week you're gone? I mean,
what if LeBron's like, hey, we need somebody else. Sorry, Drew. I know you put 4 years in here, but time for you to go. There's the door. You should never have a player making those decisions. You should always have it being upper management because, like I said, you're going to create power struggles in the locker room, and I think it's going to make it hard for you to lure other free agents. Short of them getting someone like Kyrie, who's played with LeBron, but obviously didn't enjoy his time playing with LeBron. He demanded a trade. Maybe he softened that a little bit here. Maybe, except for Kyrie, is there another guy you're looking at that's saying they're going to go to LA and play with LeBron, calling all the shots? There's sure. Not one for me. Not an elite level player.
I think they're going to find one. I think one will pop up at some point in time and rear its ugly little head and say, hey, I'll go play with Lakers and make
Kevin
the West,
Durant?
maybe make it that much harder for it. But I want to know the comment of you saying players control what teams do. That is what this contract that the NBA and their union has put together, and it gives the players all the power in the world. As much as a lot of people love what Golden State's been doing and that team, but that's not good, in my opinion, for the NBA. I know that they're loving it right now, but if it stays this way, where superstars just pile up on one team and stay together and win championships, and it keeps going from dynasty to dynasty to dynasty, I think NBA is going to lose some. And right now, all the games are watched. The viewership of these games are up. It's been up for a couple of years, but I think teams are going or fans are going to get tired of it at some point.
No, I agree, and I think we're already seeing a lot of that fatigue. Everyone that you talk to is like, I don't want it to be Golden State. Anyone but Golden State in the finals, and I'm cool with it. I have a quick fix to that, but first I want to talk about Monty Williams because I think this impacts teams like the Suns the worst. When you're talking about bringing on a new coach like Monty Williams, even though I like him, I think he's a really good coach, I look at this and I'm like, it's not going to help the Suns. They're not going to be able to sit there and bring any of these free agents to town because Monty Williams is there. There's no way for a small market team, short of drafting out of your mind, kind of like Golden State did, where you just hit and massively hit on 2 or 3 or 4 guys and convince them to stay. Short of that, there's no way for any of these small teams to really build and be competitive, which is why I think Denver, even though they're not a small market team per se, they're not LA, they're not New York, they're not Boston, they're competing in an environment that's almost impossible to compete in.
Yeah.
Especially with the way the NBA is set up. If you wanted to solve all this, if you wanted to get rid of all these super teams, there's a very quick fix. And I've been saying this for years. Get rid of the max contract for players. Make it so that you can pay these players whatever you want to pay them. That way teams like Phoenix can go after some of Golden State's players and say, we'll pay you $35 or $40 million a year if that's what it takes to get you to play ball in Phoenix. You will get these guys to split up if the money starts calling them and they start able to make, 10, 15, 20 more $1 million a year to just leave town. The other thing you need to do, instead of being like baseball and having it where the cap is very flexible and you have everything like that, try to emulate football and sit there and say, here's the hard cap. You're not allowed spending over this. Here's a minimum you have to spend. You spend this much every year. You can't go over this much. It'll make the smaller teams much more able to compete because they're going to be able to buy some talent as opposed to right now, the way things are stand, when everyone can pay the same, you're going to go play for a good team. You're not going to go play for a bad one, right?
Right, and I think Will completely agrees with us. He says the NBA is one of the most rigged sports out here. You got to buy 3 or 4 studs, 3 mediocre players, and fill your team with high school team, and you will win a title.
Yeah, you need about 8 guys,
yeah.
Maybe 7 these days, and if you can just stack it out like Golden State's done, you're going to win championships. I mean, they have basically an all-star team as their starting 5. I know Cousins is hurt now again, but if you look at it, man, if you wanted to avoid that, just make it where you can open up the wallet however much you want to pay these guys. You're allowed to pay them. I think it would solve all their problems, but I don't know that the NBA wants to do that. You'd think the players would be okay with it too, because all of a sudden, if I'm a star player, I can go make $40 million instead of $20.
Viewership is up. NBA's making a lot of money, and it blows my mind because obviously we're all sitting here all agreeing with this example. It's not fun to watch anymore. Like what my Nuggets are doing, and if you guys all know I'm a Denver Nuggets fan, what they're doing right now is amazing. They have one superstar that has one superstar underneath his belt, and it's this year. And they just won against the Spurs, and now they're going against the Portland Trailblazers, and it's awesome. And the Portland Trailblazers are the exact same situation. They literally have like one All-Star, and that's it. And we love to see it. But when they hit that Golden State, when they hit that Rockets team, that's the struggle there, because it's no longer going to be any fun for us. Because as much as I'd love to see my Nuggets in a national championship, I'm realistic. That's not happening.
I'm with you there. I don't think the Nuggets have the firepower to beat whichever team gets out of the Houston-Golden State matchup. I know Golden State's up 2-0 right now. Maybe Houston can rebound and get back into the fight and maybe steal the series, but odds are I'd say probably not. We'll talk about that a little bit first, though. And first, really quick, going into the Monty Williams thing before we move on here, Drew, I just want to ask you, the Suns in the past, since 2012 season, are 199 and 375, tied for the worst record in the NBA with the Orlando Magic. Does signing a guy like Monty Williams, as much as I like him, can you see there being a big swing here? Can they get closer to 500 just by bringing him in?
It's so hard. Unless there's a time machine, they can go back and bring Barkley back to skinny Barkley and get him where he was in his prime. No.
Yeah, I agree with you there, man. I really don't think it does. It doesn't matter what coach you hire out there in Phoenix until you become more attractive as a destination. The rules the NBA have right now, there's almost no way to compete for a team like Phoenix. There really isn't. All right.
It's a struggle.
Now, Will also said the NBA needs a cap, and they do technically have one. You're just allowed to break it if you want to keep your own guys and everything. They have the Bird rules. They have a bunch of other creative rules that are supposed to make it easier for teams to keep their players. But I'm saying open it up to free agency. If a guy wants to leave, he should be able to leave. He should be able to move around and get as much money as he's able to get on the open market. Open it up to some capitalism. Make it where you can sit there and say whatever team wants to pay him the most, he's allowed to go to that team.
Right.
Right now, when everybody can pay you, $20 million except the team you're with, where are you going to stay? You're either going to stay with the team you're with or you're going to go to one of the good ones. It's not hard, and the NBA needs to address that in their next CBA.
No doubt.
They won't, but they need to.
Nope, not while they're making money.
Absolutely. Will also says bring in Phil Jackson. He could win with scrubs. I mean, they're not the first team to try that. That's what the Knicks said, right? And he had Carmelo Anthony supposedly, closer to his prime. They didn't win too many games in New York with Phil Jackson. I'm just saying, I don't think you could attract enough talent, no matter who your coach is. It could be Popovich. It could be Steve Kerr if he left if he left Golden State and went to the Spurs. Still wouldn't make a difference, I don't think.
I gotta pump the brakes. You're gonna sit there and tell me that Steve Kerr?
Well, you could argue
somewhere else without having the superstar power he has in Golden State.
Where is somewhere else? In Phoenix, no, and that's my point. In Phoenix, no.
Ty Lue, okay, for an example, for him, okay, he won a championship. What did he do after that?
He did. Well, he's been unemployed since then.
Exactly.
And
everyone knows why.
Because it was the players, and I'll give you that. And I'm not saying Steve Kerr is the best coach ever, but you could argue Steve Kerr's been a pretty good recruiter. He got Kevin Durant to show up.
He did.
And it's easy to recruit when you've got great players like Draymond Green and Steph Curry and Klay Thompson already on the team. But he did a good job bringing Boogie Cousins in. He's brought in a lot of talent, even on the bench as well. You look at this team, man, I don't think you can sit there and say Steve Kerr's not a good coach because he's able to bring talent in.
We might go on a tangent on this, but okay, so I got to pump the brakes on you one more time. Because when you bring in players like Stephen Curry and Kevin Durant and those other people aren't asked to be the number one guy game in and game out. They're allowed to be, and every now and then they're allowed to be a rotational guy, and they show those spurts of talent. Let's not forget, the NBA is littered with talent, but there are that elite tier guys. So when you sit there and say, oh, look what he brought in Green, he brought in the other guy that I'm blanking out, the other
He brought in
Splash brother.
Durant. He brought in Cousins.
I was talking about the other Splash brother, but
Well, they drafted Thompson.
but
I'm
just
talking
saying,
about free agency.
I mean,
I'm not talking about the draft.
I'm talking about drafting though, because you're talking about these guys that he's developed, brought in to make them better players. But are they better players though? Because I had Stephen Curry on my team and Kevin Durant, and all I had to do was,
I guess we're gonna find out if Klay Thompson leaves, and that's a good
and
question.
all I have
That's
to
a
do
fair
is pass
question.
them the ball. I could be maybe the best assist guy ever in the NBA.
And that is a fair point, Drew. I totally understand what you're saying, but on the other hand, I don't know. I think you got to give him credit for the way he recruits. At this point, they're basically college recruiters, right?
Yeah.
Where it's just, can you bring talent to whatever team you're on? Can you sit there and convince the players that this is the reason you need to be playing with me? I think if he goes to Phoenix, all that goes out the window because there's no kind of sales pitch you can give a guy like Kevin Durant to say, come play out here in the desert, whether you're not going to have everything going on like you're going to have in L.A. or out in San Francisco with Golden State or in New York even with the Knicks, even though they're not very good. You just don't have any kind of chance of competing if you're a small market team, if you're not an it city.
Michael, what's going on, man? Glad you could join us. And Will, I'm glad you're always there, strong in the comments, man. If
Everyone says, why don't we talk NBA?
if anyone wants to sit there and just listen and not say anything, by all means, that's all their rights. And, of course, everyone knows that if you have something you want to say, by all means, put in the comments. We don't care. Negativity, positivity. As long as you don't make fun of Jake too much, he might cry.
On camera, too. It's ugly. You don't want to see that.
We're good with it. Either way.
Will says, nobody is better than Jordan, period. And let me just say, we do not have time to get into that can of worms, okay? I mean, how long have we talked about that? For 50, how long's LeBron been in the league? We've been arguing this. So we don't have time for that. Good to see you, Sharif. Good to see you as well. We don't have time for the Jordan versus the field argument either. We'll talk about that another day.
Can I say one comment?
Sure.
There's no one that'll ever have a better streak.
Stop. Stop.
Than Michael Jordan had.
Stop.
No one will give a better streak than what Michael Jordan
I told
did.
you we don't have time for this. Let's move forward.
It had to be talked.
We've talked about the NBA coaches. Before we move into the playoffs, I want to go Major League Baseball here for just a second. Kyle Hendricks, pitcher for the Cubs. Maybe I'm being a bit of a homer because they are my baseball team here, Drew. But he just pitched a 9-inning complete game shutout. Obviously 9 innings. Complete game shutout. Only allowed 4 hits as well. And the most impressive stat here, did it on 81 pitches. In today's Moneyball world, when are we ever going to see this again? There's a lot of times you don't get out of the 5th inning before you've thrown 81 pitches. To throw a complete game and only throw 81, this is one for the record books, not because necessarily it was a complete game shutout. That's impressive, but it happens. To do it in this few pitches and to just grind through these batters, this is an amazing start. I just had to give him a nod here because people say we don't talk enough baseball.
I know Will was just saying he's waiting for us to talk MLB. It's great. It's absolutely great. But
that concludes our MLB portion of the show. Moving forward.
But has he ever hit a home run at the end to win the game when he shut out another team?
No. I mean, you could argue Noah Syndergaard had the better stat, throwing that complete game shutout and hitting a home run on top of it to get your team's lone run. That just goes to show you the Mets do not have enough bats to support all these great arms they have in the starting rotation. I mean,
I'll take half of their pitching
if they had the Yankees. If they had half of the Dodgers teams when it came to the bats, or Houston, or one of these other teams that has just bats everywhere, they would win. They would win the World Series. I really believe that. They have just struggled to bring on the bats to support these starting arms. Maybe that changes, but I mean, Drew, they could have gone out and bought these guys in free agency, like Machado, like Bryce Harper, and they kind of shied away from that. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. Then again, I wish I could take half their pinball and just put it in pinstripes. That's what I wish. I literally do.
Don't hold your breath, man. I mean, it can happen. It's baseball. Usually, if you're good, you wind up playing for the Yankees at some point.
Dude, that whole thing. I mean, yeah, we do.
It's true. It's true.
But Cashman has really stepped away from going out there and spending big money on free agencies.
And you're right. I mean, I don't know. They just brought in Juan Carlos Stanton how long ago, Drew? And they traded for him. It wasn't free agency. They traded for him.
That was the step point right there where we stopped doing
where they're like, we're paying a lot of bats. We gotta use off for a while because, I mean, we're already spending $300 million more than everybody else. Also, Sharif says Durant should stay in Golden State. Why would you give up? And Brian saying, why would you give up a free ride out there? Would you stay in Golden State, or is this about legacy? here's why you would leave. Because you want to sit there and say, I'm the best player in the world. You've been talking about LeBron James for the past 12, 13, 14 years. I want you to talk about me now like I'm the best player. And to do that, I need to leave Golden State because I think a lot of his legacy is, yeah, you won those titles, but they won before you got there.
Yeah.
And you wound up just, clubbing baby seals as soon as you got there, just rolling over people because you put a super team together.
That's my job.
Yeah. He wants to prove that it's because of him that they won all these championships, even though it's not. I mean, it's a team effort, right? He wants to prove that a team can win a championship, or he can win a championship without the rest of the cast in Golden State. Because even when he was in OKC, the whole knock against him was, man, they've got all this talent. They had James Harden at one point. They had Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant all together, and they couldn't win a championship. They came close once. Beyond that, they had a lot of years where they had some disappointment. I mean, I think he needs to sit there and get that monkey off his back and say, I'm going to prove that all this happened because I'm just that good.
Yeah, I mean,
he shouldn't leave. I wouldn't leave. I mean, just go win like 12 championships and go down as the best ever.
Everyone's talking about Shree saying the Warriors need to move Green. Question is, what kind of value does he have, and is he worth re-signing and keeping him there?
And what would you trade for him?
And then Michael said also Thompson might leave. I mean, to be honest with you, like I said earlier, what is Thompson? What are Green without Durant, without Curry? What are they?
I think Draymond Green is a very good player. I don't think he's necessarily like an elite level player like we're talking about. He's not at the very top end of the NBA. He's probably that one step below there where he can make an impact. He can be that guy, kind of like Kevin Love when he was on the Timberwolves where they didn't have a lot of talent, where he'll put up a ton of stats, but at the end of the day, you're not winning anything. That's what I see. That's where I see Draymond Green. And it's good to have that guy because they need that big guy that can play inside. I think he brings an attitude and a swagger to Golden State that they need. He does the dirty work. When you've got a bunch of shooters, you need that guy who can do the dirty work, and I think nobody gets their hands dirtier than Draymond Green, right?
Yeah.
Or just about.
I have to. Hold on. Michael, you said you think Kerr is the best coach ever? Come on.
They said that about Spoelstra when it was the Heat, and they were going to all those championships and
I
everything
never
else.
once said that.
Well, I'm just saying, that was the kind of moniker he had. Everyone's like, man, Spoelstra, they've gone to 3 straight championships. He might be the best coach ever because this is right when he started coaching and everything. And then things kind of fell off and the talent left. I don't know. I think Kerr is a very good recruiter. I think he's very relatable to these players. He keeps a lot of big egos in check. I mean, think about it. There's a lot of talent on Golden State. It'd be very easy to implode and kind of fold in on yourself because these guys don't get along. He does a good job of managing that. When it comes to X's and O's, would you say he's better than Popovich? I don't know about that, but
see, I couldn't say that.
I mean, he gets away with a lot more moving screens maybe than the Spurs do, but we'll talk about that later. We don't have to go into the penalties.
This is exactly what I'm getting at is what Thomas said here. Thomas said Green is Horace Grant. So is Thompson Scottie Pippen? Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, Scottie Pippen was a great player, but he doesn't get any of the kind of...
I would say Thompson's probably the Scottie Pippen of this scenario.
That's what I'm saying, but he doesn't get any of the
kind of...
But they have
two Michael Jordans in both Steph Curry and Kevin Durant, where these guys are both just amazing players at their position, might be the best at their position. And I know everyone's going to say there's better point guards than Steph Curry because he doesn't distribute like some of these other guys. You know, he's not putting up the stat lines Russell Westbrook is. Yeah. But when you've got a shooter like that can just like... You can be dangerous at every range because of him. You always have to guard him. You always have to pay attention to him. That, to me, is more important than putting up rebounds for a point guard. I don't pay my point guard to get rebounds. I pay him to dish the ball and to score himself if he can. Yeah. That's why I say Curry might be the best point guard in the NBA.
Scott says players listen to Curry because of his resume as a player, which I completely agree. And Michael did redeem himself. He said, I mean, besides Phil Jackson. Okay, I'll give you that one. We got something going on outside, but we're golden.
Hopefully it's not your house that's on fire, but...
Should I check?
I think we'll be all right. Also, Scott says Green is a glue guy. I don't know about that. They won before him. I don't think Draymond Green is that glue that keeps the Golden State Warriors together, but I will say this. I think he's that guy that when you need to send somebody after somebody, you send Draymond Green to go get in their head, and they need that tough physical presence. Now that DeMarcus Cousins is especially gone, you need that nasty player who can push back on the team. He can be the villain. He can be the bad guy, and Draymond Green does that very well. We've seen Kevin Durant try to do it. We've seen, not really Curry or Klay Thompson. They really haven't filled that role, and that's fine. I don't think they're that kind of guy. Durant doesn't do it well enough. You need to send that just thug after guys at points in time, like when someone's getting in Curry's face, when they're mixing it up under the basket or something. You need the enforcer, and I think that's the role he plays at Golden State. You need that guy.
Guys, I'm not sitting there trying to knock that Steve Kerr isn't a good coach, but to sit there and call him the greatest coach of all time, or even put him up there at the top 3, is a head scratcher for me. His resume as a player is definitely really great. He plays with the Bulls. He definitely played under some great coaches, but to sit there and put him above it because he has literally a team littered with superstars, I don't know if I could do that, man. Now, if he goes down to like Phoenix, or
what you're saying is he needs to prove it. It's kind of like the Belichick syndrome, right?
Yeah.
Where Belichick didn't have a lot of success without Tom Brady. He needs to prove it without the current cast of characters he has. He may get that chance. I don't know. Maybe we see Klay Thompson and Durant leave this year, and they're stuck with Draymond. They'll pay him, and you got Steph Curry. But Steph Curry alone probably is not enough to win a championship. Right. Maybe Curry and Green together can still get it done, but I have some doubts about that too. I think the thing that Kerr does very well that nobody sits there and talks about is he manages these egos. He manages guys and keeps them on the same track. He keeps them all motivated, especially when you're as good as Golden State and you win championship after championship. It's so easy to get complacent. But he manages to keep these guys on track. He keeps them hungry, and they get fired up for these moments that they need to. There's a reason they're beating Houston 2-0 because they're fired up in the time that they need to be fired up. The only knock I can say against him is that 3-1 loss they had against the Cavs where they came back and won the series. But even that was the NBA helping them out. That was the NBA saying, get the Cavs back in this, because if you look at the penalties that were called in those games, they were trying to absolutely force feed the Cavaliers into a deeper series because they didn't want a 5-game series finish in the finals, at least. Not when you're talking about LeBron James. So, of course, I think the NBA kind of helped them out in that series. Except for that, I got to sit there and say Golden State, every time they need to turn it on, has turned it on, right?
Yeah. Scott. No, it's not Scott. Brian, I'm sorry, Scott. But Brian, all my blow-up dolls are stored in fire safes, so I have no concern about that at all.
Yeah.
I just want you...
They're in his panic room.
You were concerned, but they are perfectly fine. Scott says, players' comparisons from a different era is almost all about disrespect on earlier eras. I mean, there's no doubt about it. It's a different game. From what we watched in the 90s
it absolutely is.
To what it is now, it's completely different. That's where we talk about James Harden being one of the most pure passers of all time, is because the game developed around...
Shooters is what you mean.
Yeah,
you said passers. I'm
sorry. Shooters. That's what I meant to say, not passers. The reason he's considered that is because he's developed his game around what the era is today. Now, if he would have brought that kind of game into the early 90s, late 90s, I don't know if he'd do what he could do.
Well, I was going to say, there would guys be putting hands on you at that
there's
point.
There's a lot stronger defense.
You don't get to do that old
then.
kick jump shot where you throw your legs out and pretend like somebody hurt you to go to the line and shoot 3 free throws. That brings me to my next point. We'll talk. Why don't we talk playoffs next? Are you ready to talk about the playoffs? Because I'll talk about this when we talk about the Golden State thing. I don't want to go too far off track. And you said it was going to be a short show. Moving forward, let's talk about... I'm going to let you pick. Do you want to pick and talk about any one of these NBA series first? Is there one that's just absolutely eating you up? Do you want to talk about your Nuggets first?
We can talk about them first. Okay.
All right, let's talk about the Nuggets. Tied at 1, Drew, going into Game 3. Obviously, Portland won a close one, 97-90 in Game 2. How do you feel about guys like McCollum and Cantor stepping up for the Trailblazers? If these guys keep playing like this, can the Nuggets still beat them?
It'll be a little bit difficult because if Lillard ever comes out of his slump right now, which I did call, I said if he does not play like he's been playing, they will not sweep these Nuggets. Now the Nuggets have won a game, so now there's no sweep. There's no domination of the team. I mean, they might win the next 3 and they might be over. But they needed someone to step up. So nice to see Cantor show up. It works. I mean, it definitely helps. McCollum definitely helped. That's all great for them. But my question is, can they keep it going? Because they haven't done it all season long. It's literally been a Damian Lillard show.
Well, let me make this one point. They've done it all season long against the Nuggets. In their entire series, this was a 6-point differential for the Nuggets, I believe. They outscored them by 6 points across the entire season series. I think these are 2 very closely matched teams. I think this is a 7-game series when you look at it. I like the Nuggets. I picked them to lose in round 1 in 7 games because of experience. I wonder if this might be the one that they actually come up short in. I think as long as the Trailblazers keep playing like a team and they don't try to put it all on Lillard, try to sit there and say he can carry us like he did in the first round, I think Portland has a pretty good chance of winning this series in 7 games, but I think it's going to be close. I think these have been 2 of the closest matchups. It's probably been the best season series between any one of these groups when it comes to, who could win in any given day. I think the Nuggets are going to be in for a great and long series. The problem is, whichever one of these teams makes it out of it gets to play unfortunately, Houston or Golden State in the Western Conference Finals.
Sharif, we don't need your negativity at all, okay? It's not screw the Nuggets. They're a good team. Okay?
Well, you got to remember, he's a San Antonio
You're
fan.
just mad that your team lost, okay? Finally, by the way, because usually the Spurs have Denver's number.
And let me just back up really quick. Will says we need a Thanos snap in the NBA to make it more equal. We do not need that because James Harden will somehow manage to pull through there. And then when you take out half of the top end of the talent, who's getting every call under the sun? James Harden. I don't think we need any more of that. So
Brian says if they can keep playing like that, the Nuggets have a chance, but it will be hard. They got to stay on it. There's no doubt about it. Game 2, they're completely off. I mean, even Jokic was like, can't talk. Jokic was like, this was a weird game for us. They scored like 13 points in the second quarter of that game. I mean, it was completely off. No one seemed to get in rhythm. No one caught fire. It's not going to stay like that every game.
Well, Will help you out. He says the Nuggets are going to win in 6. And Scott also says, easy to cheer for Damian Lillard. He hopes Portland pulls this out. Look, I agree. I think Damian Lillard has been that guy that has been very, very good for years now. And Portland has just not been a factor. I mean, they have not been that team that everyone looked at and says they have a chance of winning everything. They're kind of like an also-ran that where, yeah, they're doing well. They always seem to make the playoffs or get very close to it. And then they never go anywhere with it. This might be the year that they actually at least make a Western Conference final when we're talking about them being a legitimate contender. Like I think Lillard and McCollum make them. I like Enes Kanter too. I'm not saying he's a bad player, but I think really it's the 1-2 guys that make Portland as good as they are.
Michael says Warriors will win it all. I'm a Warriors fan, Michael. I think we noticed.
And that's okay. I can't bet against you, Michael. I think you're right. I think Golden State is probably going to win this.
Right.
Why don't we talk? Let's stay in the West. Let's talk about that series next because I want to complain about a few things. Houston. I know we've probably talked about it once already before, but Houston coming out there doing their own little audit, Drew, and saying, well, last year they missed all these calls against us. What was it, like 30 calls? And it would have resulted in us scoring 20 extra points and all this extra stuff. First off, that's loser talk. I don't want to hear that. That is soft-minded loser talk. Sit there and say, I'm going to beat them. I'm going to be better than them, and there's not going to be anything you could do to stop me. Instead, they're coming out there saying, the refs are cheating us. They're doing all this other stuff. Look, I hate that. That's loser talk, man. And you can tell, I think Harden is like the most fouled guy when it comes to three-point shots, like by almost triple in the NBA. He's like one of the most fouled guys, period. Yeah. So to sit there and get all these calls for all season long and to sit there and come out and complain about it in the playoffs because Golden State got away with however many calls in your eyes, I mean, it's just weak-minded, man. I hate that kind of mentality. I hate that Houston's going into this saying, you know, oh, well, the refs are just against us. That's the only reason we're not winning. It has nothing to do with Golden State just being a really, really good team.
Yeah. I mean, what do you want from me? It's literally, in my opinion,
I want you to agree with me.
Literally, when I sit there and think about it, I think that's what he had to do. I think this is something that he had to say. He had to go and put it out there where now the refs have that eyeball on them. They have an eye on them where they can't favor one team or the other. And I'm not saying it's the right tactic, but it is a tactic that he has to do to get him on a more even playground with the Warriors. As much as you don't like it, as much as you could call it whatever, it is the right move for him to do.
I understand the gamesmanship. Like, oh, if you sit there and criticize the ref and say they're missing all these calls, sometimes you get it. But if you look at the way everyone's kind of looking at Houston, from the media to everyone else I'm talking to, and they're like, dude, you guys get all the calls all the time, right? Yeah. You're constantly on the foul line. That's where half of Harden's points come from. I mean, come on, dude. At what point does this backfire and the refs sit there and say, no, you're just complaining. You're just a whiner. And now I'm going to, kind of go against you because you're criticizing me the way I'm doing my job. It's not like I'm treating you unfairly. I give you more than anyone else. So I understand they may be upset about things, but you got to keep this to yourself. I really do think it kind of backfired on them. I think the plan was, yeah, well, we're going to complain about this, and the refs are going to give us a few more foul calls. I think they kind of flipped on them. I think the refs are going to call fewer fouls now because they're like, dude, we let you get away with everything, and now you're going to sit there and complain about the way we're doing our job. That's what I would do. If it's me, I don't know how I'd feel about that.
I think it's the right move. I'm going to say it again. I think it's the right move. I don't think that you can beat them man for man. I don't know what team can beat the Warriors man for man. There's too much power in what the Warriors have in that starting five.
Well, there's one team that I think we have to sit there and say is the favorite, and they're playing them right now, and they're down 2-0 to Golden State, and it's the Rockets, right? I mean, if you had to pick a single one.
Even comparison with them, they're not.
Well, I'm with you in that. But
let's not also.
They took him to 7 last year.
Harden's eye, he got poked in the eyes. Both of his eyes got poked. He said he's still having issues with his vision. I have not heard if he's got vision completely back in his eyes. I mean, that's going to be an issue. If Harden's down, this series is over.
Now, Sharif's also saying Houston is going to blow out the Warriors in Game 3, but let me say this. I feel like Game 2 was supposed to be that game where they were supposed to come back, and they were supposed to, rally up and beat Golden State. I don't know. I think Golden State might be the hungrier of the two teams at this point. I think last year they kind of overlooked them a little bit. They took them to 7 games. There's a lot of talk of, if Chris Paul played in that game, maybe we'd have a different champion and all that other stuff. I think that might have lit a fire under Golden State, and I give them credit for this. They've been that team that sticks with things. They stay motivated at a time where I feel like a lot of other teams would get complacent and just say, we're really good. I think they're going to stay motivated in this series. I'm not going to say it's a blowout. I think Houston wins Game 3, but I think it's going to be pretty close, man. I don't think they're blowing anyone out. We'll see. I don't know, Drew. I kind of wonder about this one.
Yeah, I hear you. Scott says 1 and 5, Golden State is the best. 1 through 5, Golden State is the best team still standing. Houston is not as good as Philly outside.
With Cousins out, I'd say 1 through 4. But yeah, I agree. I mean, with everybody healthy, they are the best 1 through 5 in the league. But like I said, you've got an all-star team. Yep. Literally every one of those guys could be an all-star at their position.
Yep.
Even Draymond Green, I think, is the probably weakest link of the chain. But, I mean, come on, the dude's still really good.
Will, I'm sorry. We're not going to be talking any more MLB, man. I'm sorry, bro. And Cherie says Boston is a matchup nightmare for Golden State. But they got to get through their own series first.
Yeah, I was going to say. Well, why don't we talk about that? Why don't we move on and talk about the Bucks and the Celtics? Obviously, the series is tied at 1 here, Drew. The Bucks just put a hurting on the Celtics in Game 2, winning 123-102. Kyrie went 4 for 18 from the field. I don't know. Does the Celtics live and die with Kyrie Irving here? Because I know Gordon Hayward's on the team. I know they got guys like Tatum as well. Is there another guy who's stepping up, like Morris or something like that can make this difference, or does Kyrie just have to play out of his mind to beat the Bucks?
I think he does.
Yeah?
I think it's just like the same thing with Houston. If James Harden is not on, I think it's an issue. I think the team's going to struggle a little bit. But I think that's with any team with one superstar. Then again, bring it back to the Warriors. When one superstar in the Warriors is failing, they got 3 or 4 more to pick up the pace right in behind them. So it is a struggle. I mean, that's when you see championships like, and I don't mean to bring it back to LeBron, but when you look at him against the Cavs, going against the Warriors, it is something amazing. It is something amazing to watch because it is one guy literally willing his team over a team that's definitely better on paper.
Yeah, no, I totally agree in the finals, but I'm not going to sit there and say it was an amazing feat by him to go beat up on everybody in the East to get there. So I get what you're saying. I agree with you there. I wonder if either one of these teams, you talk about having one superstar, is there another guy on any one of these teams, maybe Chris Middleton, if he plays, at his top form, can sit there and be the second guy in Milwaukee, but beyond that, there's not really anyone on these teams that I'm like, they're going to take the series over. I think Boston is a very good team, but you can't go pound for pound with Golden State with a very good team. You need to be elite like they are, and I just don't see any one of these teams. Maybe the Sixers, maybe you could say Ben Simmons and Embiid can both be those guys, but it's not Kyle Lowry in the Raptors. I mean, they have Kawhi. Beyond that, they don't have anyone else. I mean, Siakam's good, but do you see them really going to go beat a team like Golden State with Kyle Lowry being at best your third? No, I don't think so either. I think Golden State or the Warriors are going to, or the Rockets, I should say. If the Rockets can pull this off, they are probably going to win the championship. I really believe that.
I think if the Rockets win, it's a possibility that someone from the East could upset them. I think if the Warriors win, then it's hands down favorite Warriors. I still see the Bucks winning this series against the Celtics. I believe in the Greek Freak and what he can do. I like what the Bucks are bringing to the table or the court every time that they touch it. I like the way this team is playing as a team. With the Celtics, there's too much controversy with Kyrie always opening up his mouth. If Kyrie is not on fire, I think they struggle.
Hold on. He's a basketball genius, if you haven't heard. No. Self-proclaimed basketball genius. Look, I don't know. I think he's a very good player, but again, I think part of it comes down to attitude and everything. The Bucks seem to be the quieter team that just goes in and works harder. I know Giannis talks a little bit, but for the most part, it's pretty positive when you hear him talk. I think between that, as long as Middleton and the supporting cast stay hot for Milwaukee, they're going to get through this series at the very least. I think the the Milwaukee Bucks are the best team in the East, just like their record shows. I really do believe that. I think they're still the team to beat. I think Giannis having that bad game 1 was a bit more of an aberration, and I think they're going to be just fine going forward. I think they beat the Celtics in probably 6.
Just to catch up on some comments here, Scott says Jason Tatum has not been very good these playoffs. Sharif says Jaylen Brown has played well, and Middleton is a third option on other teams.
What's other teams? I mean, on Houston, yeah, he's probably a third option. For Portland, maybe you could sit there and say McCollum is better than him. I don't know, man. I think when you look at the East, I think the 76ers would love to have him at this point. I know they got Jimmy Butler to shoot the ball and everything, but I think they'd love to have a guy like Chris Middleton on there. I think he might be the best guy nobody talks about, except maybe Damian Lillard. I think Damian Lillard doesn't get the respect he deserves for as good as he is. And I'm not saying the two are comparable, but I'm saying when it comes to underrated superstars, I think Chris Middleton is a very good shooter and a very good player for the fact that nobody ever talks about how good he is.
Yeah, I mean, he'd definitely find himself in a starting role in any other team, maybe minus the Warriors.
All right, let's move on and talk about our last series here. Let's talk about the Sixers and Raptors, because this one, Philly's up 2-1, and I was a bit surprised by this. I thought Toronto was going to be able to handle business and get ahead in this, but the 76ers won Game 3 pretty convincingly, Drew. Do we see that continue, or do you think the Raptors get back on track?
Well, the real question is, has the controversy inside the locker room and on the court side, is it all done? I mean, is it done? Do you think it comes into effect again a little bit later? I mean, the first series, even though it went long, it wasn't a stressful series because it's not against the better teams. I'm not trying to knock the team. I can't even think. Pistons, was it?
No. For 76ers was Orlando, right?
Orlando, yeah. But I'm just saying, they're going to find better teams. I mean, whoever comes out of the Celtics and Bucks, if they can win this series against the Raptors, they're going to find themselves in a lot more controversy, a lot more stress-related games and series. So does that controversy on the sideline come back?
I think it could. I think you got a good point, especially if the series goes long. It's only a matter of time before the egos kind of seem to get in the way for the 76ers. They're another one of those teams that I think they have all the talk in the world, but sometimes you got to walk before you talk. Yeah. I'm not sure that they're in that right mindset to go beat a team like the Raptors that are pretty quiet. I think Kawhi Leonard might be one of the quietest superstars in the NBA, where you just don't hear much from this guy, and he just goes out and does his job and works hard every day. I think the Raptors still do win this series. I think they're going to win probably in 7. I think this is going to be one of the better ones of the NBA playoffs, but I'm still going to take Toronto.
I don't have a dog in this fight, but I think the Sixers can win it.
Will says, I had it right before, and the Buccaneers are the best team. Well, they might have the first pick next year. They might be first at something. I'm kidding, of course. Sort of. Anyway, moving forward, let's talk about hockey. Let's talk about the NHL. The Islanders up 3-0 when every other series is tied 2-2. I didn't see this coming. I mean, is Barry Trotz just that good of a coach, Drew? I mean, they play really good defense out there in New York.
I think the Islanders are just a really good team that no one really saw being this good. Like, they knew they were good, but I don't think they knew exactly how good this team was going to be.
And I think they were a team everyone's like, they just need to add a couple goal scorers, and they're
exactly
a Stanley Cup contender at that point.
And I hate to sit there and knock the Hurricane, but I think the Hurricane just played a little bit above who they truly are in their last series.
Yeah, I agree. I think they beat a fatigued team. I talk about fatigue a lot in the NHL because it's as physical the game as it is. It's a very long season as well. When you have a team like the Capitals that had to go all the way through an extra 2 months worth of play to get to the finals last year, then you have a team like the Hurricanes that missed the playoffs that are 2 months more rested than the other. I think they beat them in 7 because they were more rested, more than them being more talented. And I think the Islanders are kind of proving that. I mean, they're sitting there just beating up on them. This could be the second sweep coming up here, Drew.
I think definitely a possibility.
It's going to be an interesting series going forward to watch because if they get rest and the rest of these series go long, they might be able to sneak their way into the Stanley Cup.
Will, I have to stop you there. Jake, you said Jake has so much hate for Tampa Bay.
Tampa's actually my NFC team.
That's his second favorite team, so that's not true at all.
It's not that I hate them, Will. It's just that they're messing up, and I have to
You're
call
a realist?
them out. I am, exactly. I can't sit there and tell you anything about this team absolutely makes me say they're going to be good here coming up. So that, to me, is the biggest negative for Tampa Bay.
They made some good coaching hires, but we'll see.
Okay, all right. Bruce Arians is the best thing to happen to Tampa Bay since John Gruden left. Moving forward.
Actually, it is. Why?
Moving forward, let's talk about the Bruins and the Blue Jackets here, Drew. Obviously, 2-2. Columbus, much farther along into the playoffs than I think anyone picked them to have.
Right.
This is the Cinderella this year, right? We've seen this happen before. Can another team like Columbus make it to the Stanley Cup again? Another underdog like this that flies so far under the radar that they just kind of quietly make it in?
Blues? Blue Jackets?
Well, I wouldn't call the Blues exactly a team under the radar. I mean, if you look at the Blues, it's that team that did terrible to start, then January rolls around and they absolutely turn it on.
I mean,
they turn into one of the best NHL teams out there.
Right. It's just I just have, when I think about it, like the Blue Jackets.
Now, Brian's with me. He says the Columbus Blue Jackets will pull it out. I don't think so, man. I think Boston wins this one. I think it goes to 7. It's a chippy series, but I got to go with the team that I think is still better on paper.
I'm trying to get my words right because I'm trying to think, do the Blue Jackets fit the Cinderella story? If the Hurricanes were sitting there and beating the Islanders, I would give that the Cinderella story.
It's the Cinderella story. Remember, everyone's like, dude, they're getting swept by the Lightning. They're not that good of a team. They're going up against a team that won the President's Trophy. They're the best team in hockey, and then they beat them. They didn't just beat them; they swept them, Drew.
Right.
They reversed the sweep when everyone's sitting there saying it's gonna be 4 games going the other way. And when I mean everyone, I mean me and like a couple other people I talked to. And then he flipped the script. They swept the Tampa Bay Lightning. Now all of a sudden,
all right, I'll give it to you.
This could be a series that they wind up being a Cinderella in. I really do believe they're one of those teams that go before the playoffs. We like the Blue Jackets. Everyone watch out for them. No, nobody was. So for them playing like this, I think it's going to be.
Gonna win this series.
It's going to be nice going forward. But for right now, I think Boston's going to manage.
Maybe it's just because I don't want to see the Blue Jackets. Is that weird? I just don't care if they're in there. Does that make sense?
Now,
so to sit there and say that I want to see them in there as a Cinderella story, I don't.
You just want them to fail, huh?
I want to see Boston win this series.
Well, I think the NHL is kind of with you, man. They have a tendency to lean towards those old blood teams as well. The Bruins are one of the oldest ones out there. I think they're going to win the series, whether you want to sit there and blame the refs, when I sit there and say that Boston's just the better team. I think they're going to find a way to pull it off regardless. Let's talk Sharks Avalanche next.
Hold on. Boston. Brian says Boston's good, man. They play hard and fast, but if CJB keeps up with playing like that, they can... And Bob stays on point, they'll do it.
Look, Brian, I think they're a good team. It wouldn't shock me if they won the series. The way they're fighting for this, I think they could absolutely win it, but I am still going Boston here.
Right on, Drew. You misspelled right on.
Well, yeah, you sitting there saying, he wanted his team to bounce out of the playoffs. Yeah, good job, man. Good call. Let me disagree with you.
You don't like my team either.
Let's talk Sharks Avalanche.
Then he said horse poop. You also misspelled poop.
You already said shit once, Drew. It's okay. You can say it.
Oh.
Moving forward, let's talk about the Sharks and the Avalanche. The Sharks are tired, man. They're old. There's some old dudes out there. I'm kind of surprised to see them battling like this. But then again, on the other hand, the Avalanche have that top line, and everybody else, I'm kind of like, how is this team in the playoffs? Their top line's really, really good. I like McKinnon. I think McKinnon's a great player. I like guys like Landeskog, but except for that, Drew, there's not a lot of guys on this Avalanche team I can point to and sit there and say
they're winning this series.
They're a great team. I'm with you. I think they win
they're
too.
Gonna win this series
because the Sharks just survived an incredibly emotional Game 7 last series.
There you go, Brian. You can shit on my Avalanche.
They're old as well. I think the Sharks are going to they're going to hang in there because, again, I think they have a lot of talent out there in San Jose, but I just don't think they're going to have the stamina to hang with a team like the Avalanche, who's much younger than they are.
But we sat there. Thanks, Brian. We sat there and we said this about the Sharks before. We sat there and said that their stamina is going to stop. The age of them is going to be an issue.
And then they had a Game 7 where they were down 3-1, and they had a major penalty go their way that probably shouldn't have been a major penalty. Well, let me finish. It took a little bit of luck to get through the last one. If they don't get that major penalty and score those, 3 or 4 goals in like 5 minutes, the Sharks aren't in the series, Drew. We're talking about Vegas playing against them. So, honestly, I look at this series. They kind of escaped last series. I thought they were kind of getting tired towards the end of that as well. I think the Avalanche are the younger team, the fresher team. I think they're going to manage to pull out another one. Then we're going to be talking about, like, how does a team with one line make it into the Western Conference Finals? Speaking of that, let's talk about the Stars maybe making it to the Western Conference Finals as well.
Happening.
How does a one-line team manage to make it to the Western Conference Finals?
Not happening. The Blues and Bennington, they're going to get their stuff together.
I don't think it's that they don't have their stuff together. I think it's just the Stars are incredibly physical. They're just beating teams up and they're wearing them down. They're not.
I'm going to make someone else mad. I don't care. Stars are not a good team. Blue Jackets, I'll give them that. They beat one of the better teams in the NHL. I'll give them that. They deserve it. I did take my words back. They are the Cinderella story. I just wanted to give it to somebody else, maybe like my Avalanche or the St. Louis Blues. But I'll pull it away. That's not true. But I'm not going to lie. The Stars suck. They're not a good team. They picked on a crappy team in the Predators. And
I wouldn't say no. Hold on, let me stop you.
No, I'm going to tell you.
No. You're going to stop and you're going to let me fix
They're not good.
They are a very good team that's not playing very well.
Score.
And what happened? The year started out, they were hot. They were a really good team.
Talking about the Predators?
Yeah, they were hot.
They
were very
score.
Good. At the end of the year, yeah, absolutely, they fell apart. But guess what? Neither can Dallas. Dallas doesn't score a lot of goals, Drew. They play defense. Guess what? The Islanders don't score a lot of goals either. They're in there too because they play good defense. Look. The Stars are a physical team.
Their defense was playing great.
Who's that? The Predators?
Yes.
I think they still did pretty well. The defense was still all right. I mean, Pekka Rinne actually put together a few games that weren't terrible.
It wasn't right.
And they couldn't. You're right. They couldn't score the puck to wind up winning.
I wouldn't even blame him. They went like.
Well, I'm not blaming him. I'm saying
they
he
went
did
like
fine.
0-17 in their power plays, man. I don't even know what it was.
It was like the 20th worst power play across the entire season. In NHL history. So, yeah, I mean, they didn't have a good power play.
Score. They
didn't have a good power play. They got hurt. They're not terrible, Drew. They're a team that's 2 years removed from the Stanley Cup. They have the core all together.
Did they win that Stanley Cup?
No, they didn't. But
okay.
they probably should have when you talk about the goals that were disallowed.
And I like the Predators. I'm just telling you.
To sit there and say they're not a good team is just ridiculous, dude.
Absolutely.
It's all about streaks in hockey.
Right.
Whether you're hot or whether you're not. I mean, look at the Blues. They were absolutely awful for the first half of the season. The Predators were just the reverse of that. They were good at the beginning, and then the end came around, and they're like, oh, yeah, we suck. So, I mean, you look at this team,
right.
It's all about rhythm. The Predators were out of rhythm, but the Blues were not, and the Stars are still hanging with them.
They are.
Which is the point I want to make here. Did they scrape through, Drew? Did they manage to get it done?
I think the Blues win this. I really do. As much as the Dallas Stars have played really well, I just think that Jordan Benton will get himself together, and he will stop a lot of this. He will have one of those 2-3 great games where he's not letting a lot of scores happen, and that's where they're going to win this game.
And I agree. I think the Blues are still probably going to win the series, but I'm saying with the way the Stars are playing right now, as physical as they're playing, they can get it done. And I didn't think this was a team that, going into the playoffs, I was not like, this is a team that's going far, but this absolutely could happen. So I'm going to take the Blues in 7. I still think the Blues are going to win, but I'm not going to be shocked if it goes any other way.
I'll give you that.
All right.
Will says he thinks we should do a fantasy football league for the show. Man,
we're talking about it.
I'm not against it, but it's just really hard because, I mean, how many teams you put into a league where
don't make excuses.
Where it stops,
we'll talk about it.
Where it stops being fun. I mean, that's where our issue is. You can't have 20 teams. Like, where does the limit go? Where
everybody gets one player. Just pick one guy. All right. We'll talk about that later. Obviously, we're talking about doing something for fantasy as well. We'll find a way to make it happen. Brian also says CBJ sucked in the beginning but got hot, and he's right. What do you mean, unfortunately, Brian? I've been on your side all show. Come on, man. Help me out. It's all about stamina and momentum. I'm right there with you. That's a big part to hockey as well, and I think the teams that pull through are the teams that are going to be fresher, younger, and hot. I mean, I think that's you. That didn't sound right. Fresher, younger, and, playing better, I guess.
You just said
they're hot.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving forward. Drew, we've got some special thanks. I'm going to leave you with that thought.
Guys, thank you so much for all the likes, shares, and comments. We appreciate all the love. And then again, Facebook sucks. They do not appreciate a good show or a good quality time with you guys. So all that stuff definitely helps. And we're going to give a special thanks out to Brian, Will, Michael, Sharif, Thomas, and Scott. You guys are all awesome. Thank you so much.
Yep, watch out for those young, hot hockey players out there.
Don't worry, Jake is snagging them all up.
For Sports Around the Bar, I'm Jake. This is Drew. We'll be back Monday to talk about stuff.
What day is it?
I don't know. What are we talking? It's Friday.
Okay.
I know. I'm lost.
Right.
I'm out in space. Anyway, we will be back on Monday to talk pretty much anything going on in sports.
Right.
We might be back to talk playoffs again, just depending on how some of these games go.
Yep.
So for Sports Around the Bar, I'm Jake the Bartender. This is Drew. We will see you guys next time.